Imagine a library where everyone feels welcomed, where books are celebrated, and where the librarian isn't just someone who shelves books, but a passionate advocate for knowledge, inclusion, and joy. From shelving books at the very library he grew up in to becoming a viral sensation, he's captured hearts with uplifting videos that mix book recommendations with powerful affirmations. Now, as PBS's resident librarian, he's on a mission to remind people that libraries are for everybody, no matter who you are or what you love to read. How does he handle book challenges? What does he say to parents questioning their kids' reading choices? And how does he keep spreading unhinged library joy everywhere he goes? Please welcome to Unban Coolies, Mychal Threets.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. Happy to be talking with you.
You've inspired so many with your love for books and libraries. Who inspired you to become a librarian, and what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That's such a good question. You know what? I think a lot of people inspired me to become a librarian. I think definitely my parents, my mom and my dad, they're the ones who kind of create the love of reading that I've had my entire life. My dad was always big on reading for an hour a day. That's how we got to be able to watch TV for an hour. That's how we got to be able to play things like Crash Bandicoot and Donkey Kong. Basically, we wanted to like so he kind of like, he was a disciplinarian of reading is important, literacy is imperative. And my mom was always like, "We're going to read every single day." I was homeschooled from kindergarten until junior year of high school, so I never went to senior year. And she read aloud to us almost every single day up until high school, reading all sorts of stories from picture books to chapter books to middle grade to young adult books. She was just always encouraging us to read. So I'm forever thankful to them for the love of literature that I have. Um, I always thank my grandparents when it comes to inspiring me to love reading, to become a librarian, because they always talked about their past, about how people weren't always allowed to become librarians, to visit the library, to have library cards. So I'm just so honored and blessed to be a descendant of them and just be able to bother people about libraries incessantly. But also, I think just my local librarians, my children's librarian, still works for the same system that I used to work for. So that's a super cool connection. And also just being PBS's resident librarian, growing up with folks like Mr. Rogers and LeVar Burton, they'll always be my heroes. And the best advice I've ever received, that's a good question. I don't know about actual advice I received in becoming a librarian, but I think one of my very first supervising librarians that I had, who was my boss, was very good about talking about how important it was to take care of your mental health, about if you weren't doing well, to just let them know, and they would find a way to help you out. And that's the supervisor I tried to be. That's the librarian I've always tried to be. Is yes, there are rules, but taking care of people, making them feel safe, making them feel like they're valued, like they're worthy, is beyond the most important thing when it comes to being a librarian.
So, your parents almost force you to read and really stress the importance of literature to you.
They
So,
very
do you
much
think
did.
it's important for every single kid or every single parent to make their kid to read?
I think it is. I think it's important not just to make them read, but to work with them to find out why they want to love to read. I think for a lot of parents and grown-ups that I've encountered in my experience as a librarian, as a library worker, there's so much fear in them not becoming literate and them not reaching their certain reading level. I know we always do studies on the third grade reading level, fourth grade reading level, and so on. I think people are so afraid. That's why we have this problem in the world where people think that audiobooks are not real reading. They think the graphic novels are not real reading. They think the comic books are not real reading because they're afraid that it means that their kids will never read chapter books, middle grade books, adult fiction, adult mystery, adult thriller. They think that they're going to be stuck with graphic novels and comic books forever, which there's no problem with. Those are incredible books. They're incredibly well written, incredible stories. But I think if we focus on the joy of reading, that's how we build lifelong readers. So I do think that every kid should be made to read. But I think most importantly that we should work together on loving to read between the grown up and between the child, and that starts as early as being born. I always joke about how I love when new parents read to their babies as soon as they get home from the hospital, and the poor baby who doesn't understand English, doesn't understand Spanish, doesn't understand. Um, Japanese, French, whatever the language they may be. They're just trying to exist in the world, and they're excited caregivers are already reading to them. And I think that is really that's where it starts is building that baby brain and just making reading a daily part of life. And I think that's why your question is so good: is should we make our kids read? And I think the answer again is yes, but I think it starts with just being that role model, letting them see that you're reading. They're going to want to instinctively read because you're their heroes, and they say, I want to be just like them. And if you're reading, they're going to be set up for life.
Unban Coolies advocates for the freedom to read and ensuring diverse voices remain accessible to young readers. With that in mind, what advice would you give to parents who are concerned about their kid reading a book they don't want their kid reading?
You know what? It's such a complicated subject. But I think the problem that I've encountered is that I believe that grown-ups should have the right to make decisions about what their child reads. But that's why I think it ends. You shouldn't have control over what other children read. It's okay if you're worried about the book, if you think that there are problems inherently in the literature. That's fine between you and your child, but you don't know the life of another household. You don't know what that child needs. You don't know what they may be experiencing. You may never know of like they've always wanted to feel seen. They've always wanted to belong in books. So yes, there should be decisions made between a grown up and a child. But that's as far as I'm willing to go in being understanding of book bans. I think I am very lucky in that I get to speak with kids. Visit school libraries. I get to talk on panels, and sometimes there are actual young kids as young as third, fourth, fifth grade talking about the right to read, and they're outraged, and they don't understand why all these books are being banned. They don't understand why they're never given a full reason as to why the book is banned. It's not explained to them, and shockingly to me, I think in more of these discussions is listening to these kids, these third through eighth graders, who say their peers have no idea that the books are being banned, and it's these kids who are using their powerful voices, people like yourself, people younger, who are saying, no, what's going on? Why can't I read these books? If you're going to say that, then let me know why. This is why we're having a literacy crisis. Is because you're trying to take away books. So that's a long way of talking about the history, my personal viewpoint on book bans, talking about the right to read, which kids are talking about, and saying that parents should just be able to have that conversation just with themselves and not worry so much about other kids. Yes, we want to worry about their future. We want to worry where they're at, but we also want these decisions being made begin because you don't know the background. You don't know what people need when it comes to stories and stories for a person like me, for a person like myself, who's often had some mental health struggles, books were always my very first friends. And there are many books I read as a kid, many books I would read now as a kid that would probably be banned. And if my quote unquote friends had been basically removed, who knows what I would have done as a kid with my struggles. So I think when we do that, we don't realize how detrimental it is to the future of kids by saying you can't read these books, and we need to concentrate on their future. We need to have conversations with them as the real human beings that they are, and listen to them when it comes to why books why books should be read, and for some families, for some households, why books are not allowed to be read because they're seeing that decision is maybe being made, and they have questions, and in the future, it's going to harm what they choose to read and if they want to keep on reading. So I think if we want to make lifelong readers, we should be very careful and very cautious about banning books, about removing books. From the life of kids because they're far more brilliant than we can ever think, and I think we just need to have conversations with them. I think they're the ones who we should be talking to and saying, what do you think about parents banning books, saying you can't read this book?
What's a book you wish people would check out more, but often gets overlooked?
I read a lot of what I guess could now be considered classics. But I think I always recommend Small Steps by Lewis Sacker. If you've ever read Holes by Lewis Sacker, a lot of people don't know that there is a sequel to Holes, and it is Small Steps. It is the story of Armpit from the world of Holes and Stanley Yelnats. Um, but I often I think that a lot of people are no longer reading Number the Stars by Madeline L'Engle. They're not reading The Giver as much by Lois Lowry. And I also know and I understand why a lot of people are not reading Bridge to Terabithia. anymore, which I get because it's very sad, it's very scarring as a young person, as an adult. But I think it is a powerful story that needs to be kept on being read. So I think those would be my go-tos, but also still just rereading Judy Blume, rereading Beverly Cleary. I think we forget that, like, especially for kids of today, kids and teens, I think we consider those books to have been, I guess, like too old, but they're not. I think kids still want to read about Fudge. They still want to read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. They still want to read about Ramona and Beezus. They still want to read about Henry Huggins and Ralph S. Mouse. I'm a typical library person. There's so many books I can keep on mentioning. I don't think all of those are overlooked, with the exception of Small Steps. But I do think they're forgotten, and we need to remember the books that we all loved as kids.
Do they have like a certain theme to them? Is that a reason why you suggest them?
The theme would just be that they're some of my favorites. They're the ones that I read all the time as a kid. They're the ones that made me fall in love with reading at the library. The Giver by Lois Lowry, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. I think those are books that start to talk about heavier subjects for kids. They're written towards younger folks. But I think that would be the only theme. Those are the books that I kind of read as a kid and was like, oh man, life is a little bit different. I didn't realize that, and it made my brain start to churn, got the gears going. But the other ones, the other ones are just, I think, just fun stories. They're just books that I just happened to love as I was beginning my lifelong love of reading.
If you weren't a librarian, what do you think you'd be doing?
If I wasn't a librarian, that's a good question. I believe I always had a love for science. I wasn't very good at science, but I think I've always been interested in the medical field. So I believe if I wasn't a librarian, I would love to be a registered nurse. I think just again, just the people I grew up with always talking about helping people, and I feel like I would love to be in the helping field that is nursing, but not just nursing. I recently learned how important of course, doctors are in the medical field. Nurses, for my own background, mental health therapists, psychiatrists are incredibly important. The support staff, the secretaries, the administration, the janitorial staff, the respiratory therapists. There's so many different people, but I believe if I wasn't in the library world, I would be in the medical world.
I thought you were gonna say you were just gonna do social media full time.
You know what, that would be something I've always loved social media, but I think I have like a not a love-hate relationship with social media. But I've always just seen social media as a hobby, as a way to connect um, with friends and to make friends, to find out what's going on in the world, and just to have fun, just to be a little bit silly, a little bit unhinged, as we alluded to earlier. So I don't think I've never really considered social media as a career, although I guess it is kind of my career nowadays. But like even me myself, I've never identified with the term influencer. I have no problem with influencers. I have friends who are legitimate influencers, but it's never a term that I have personally connected with.
You've built a huge social media presence around books and libraries. What's been the most surprising or memorable response you've received from your audience?
By far, the most surprising is that people actually follow me on social media. I think I've always been shocked by the fact that I actually see when I get my notifications, it is like, oh, you have new followers, new comments. I think that's always been shocking to me, and not just because it's me. I think that's the first thing for a person like myself who's still learning to like themselves, still learning to love themselves, is that it's just my platform, but not even just being my platform. I think it being libraries. I got on TikTok at the height of the pandemic, 2020, maybe closer to 2021, when I always joke that people were either downloading TikTok or they were playing Animal Crossing, and I didn't have the right console to play Animal Crossing, so I downloaded TikTok, and I think people had forgotten about the library, and that's why I got on social media and started talking about the things I do. So I started telling library kid stories, talking about books, of course, but also talking about library cards and the board game collections, video game collections, talking about 3D printing, tooling libraries, Libby, Hoopla, Canopy. Um, and I thought I would be lucky if I got 100 people to get library cards, to listened to what I was saying, and I was shocked that so many people, way more than 100, to my immense surprise, were listening to what I had to say about libraries. And I think what's most surprising is that more and more people listened, and that they still listened. I definitely thought it would be like a 15 minutes of fame, if at all. I think now we're going on to maybe minute 52 is is where I'm currently at. But no, I think the biggest, my favorite thing about the response is the people who do get library cards. Um, I love that probably at least on a weekly basis I get people who tag me, who send me messages, who email me and say, "Hey, look, I got a library card at my local library. I thought you'd be proud of me. I just want to let you know that I'm a library kid." They talk about their library kids, bringing their library kids to the library and introducing them to story time, to homework help, to graphic novels, to the manga collections, to so much more. And also because I talk about mental health, I think it's amazing to hear the response of people who have stayed one more day, who have stayed for 24 more hours, who talk about their anxiety, their panic attacks, their depression, their postpartum depression, all these things. And I don't, I, to this day, I do not believe it's me. I think I do just have a genuine love for libraries, for books, for educators. But I think it's just that when people listen to what I'm saying, they remember how much they love the library, how much they love their local library, um, how much they didn't realize that they may be struggling, and they recognize that I hope they recognize that they're not alone. Um, and that's been just the most surprising response, but the best response is just the messages of hope that I receive, and the encouragement that I get from the social media community, from real life. A lot of times people come up to me and say, "Hey, are you the library person? Are you the library guy? Are you the guy who talks about anxiety?" And I don't necessarily want to be synonymous with anxiety and depression, but if that's what it takes for people to start prioritizing their own mental health, I'm okay with it, as we all go on that journey. So, again, I don't see myself as a famous person. I don't see myself as a social media personality, but it's just so cool to play a role in people loving their local library, loving their school library, and people starting to know that it's okay to not be okay, so that they can get to okay.
Ben Coolies always stresses the importance of representation in literature and diverse books.
Nice.
So, how do you believe representation in literature can benefit readers?
You know what? It's the best thing in the world to have representation in literature. I mean, there's so many kids, there's so many people from all backgrounds of life, and to be able to see yourself in a book on the pages is one of the greatest feelings in the entire world. Again, I mean, I mentioned all those books that I read, and I think the common denominator in all of them is that I don't believe that there is a or person of color protagonist in any of those books. And those are the books I was raised with as a kid. But when I saw Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis, when I read that book, I was just so blown away. I couldn't believe it. It became one of my favorite books instantly, and that's still a feeling that library grown up still experience to this day. I mean, I was a practicing librarian up until March 1st, 2024, and then even in January, February of 2024, there were still library kids who came into the library and they were in awe that I was a librarian, that I was a person behind a desk, with my frizzy afro, with all my literature tattoos, um, and with my skin color that looked like theirs, because they had never seen such a thing. And they would pull on their grown up sleeves, on their pants, and say, "Wow, that person looks like me." It is, and that's the feeling that happens when you have representation. It's so amazing. I think again, your show is called Unban Coolies, and I think that's the whole worry with banned books is that it takes away representation. There's some fear of what goes into the stories, but honestly, representation is full on joy. It's not an agenda. It's not trying to change people's minds. It's not trying to say that you should be ashamed to be not this skin color. It's the exact opposite. It's saying, yes, we have stories to tell. Sometimes our stories are based on history, they're based on something that happened, but most often it's just that they're authors of color. They're authors who are disabled, who are mentally ill, who are neurodivergent. They have characters who happen to be people of color, who happen to be disabled, who happen to be mentally ill. And it's just telling a story. It's just showing these library kids, showing people that their story deserves to be told. And that's, I think that's really the essence of what representation matters means. It's not it is revolutionary. Representation is revolutionary. Library love is revolutionary, but not revolutionary in a call to arms way. It's revolutionary in like, this is the change, this is hope, this is our future, that we all get to belong in books, we all get to tell our story, we all get to rejoice in our differences so that we can come together and better humanity and better the world. And I think when I talk about library kids are going to save the world, it's because of representation. It's because of the white kids who are reading all these books about people of color, about different backgrounds, and they're like, yes, that's my friend. That's their story. That's how I get to learn. And the same thing for black kids reading about Asian stories, Asian kids reading about Mexican stories. All everybody reading stories about the mentally ill, the disabled, the neurodivergent, and just it's just us learning about each other, but just embracing our differences, embracing stories, and realizing that it's just words on pages. And like I said earlier, talking about a person like me who needed these books to have friends when I didn't have friends, and they're all just our various friendships, and that's what representation is in literature. It's just a whole bunch of different, wonderful, beautiful friends.
You often talk about making libraries feel like a welcoming space. What are some ways libraries can do better at reaching young people and marginalized communities?
Another great question. I think the best way that libraries can reach people in marginalized communities and just be better at being welcoming, at being inclusive, being diverse, and creating an atmosphere of belonging is to use the community around them, is to listen to them. I think far too often, just because of busy administrators, busy schedules, busy library life, we just have conversations within ourselves as library staff, and we try to make the best decisions. We try to use our knowledge of the community, but we often forget about how great of a tool every single one of those neighbors in the community is. And I think using them, I think having continuous town halls, asking people at the library desk every time they get a library card, what do you need from the library when they come to story time, when they go to homework help, when they attend author talks, when they sign up for summer reading, just having a question, just saying, hey, why are you using the library? What could we do to make the library better for you? What would it take to get your neighbor who doesn't have a library card into the library? I think that's by far the best thing that library people can do to further a culture of welcoming, of belonging, and also, I mean, library people we're so burnt out. We go through so much that people don't see, and just again, just having people just support library staff, just saying thank you to them for everything that they're doing. So it's a both way street. We need help from the community, but we also need the community to help us as well and be willing to engage and have these conversations. That way, the library is a place where library kids feel welcome and safe, where library grown-ups feel safe, where the unhoused feel that they're not going to be excluded, they're not going to be alienated, they're not going to be othered, and it's a place that everybody gets to just keep on growing, keep on flourishing, and be an unbanned coolie like yourself, and just yeah, just continue to be the best version of themselves. And I think if we do those things, I think that's when the library continues to be the most important community hub that ever was.
Today's conversation reminded us of something simple but powerful. Libraries belong to everyone. Whether it's a child discovering a new favorite book, or a teen questioning the world around them, or an adult seeking knowledge and connection, libraries are a refuge. And librarians like Mychal make them feel like home. As censorship continues to challenge access to books, voices like his matter more than ever. It's not just about stories on the shelves, it's about the people who fight to keep them. A huge thank you to Mychal Threets for sharing his wisdom, humor, and of course, unhinged library joy.
Always. Thank you, my friend.